My name is Burke, and I am a graduate student at the University of Victoria in the School of Environmental Studies. So I will be talking about my graduate work exploring the depth of rockfish conservation with two different underwater survey methods, both SCUBA and underwater video. So I'm in the second year of my master's, and although I have finished my fieldwork, I unfortunately cannot speak to any of the results quite yet because I am still in the data transcription and analysis stages. So I will tell you about the questions I am trying to answer, and I will gladly take recommendations from all you experts in the room on my data analysis. So to provide a brief overview, I feel like there are many people better suited to do this in the room than I, so I will go through this quickly. So there is much concern over the state of the marine environment, and marine protected areas and fisheries closure are being implemented as strategies to address these concerns, although not all fisheries closures or marine protected areas have been shown to be effective. So as Jeff so eloquently described, rockfish are very vulnerable. So a couple of the reasons that he said, so they're vulnerable to overfishing because they can reproduce quite late. So that means they could reach marketable size before they have a chance to make more little baby rockfish. So many of these fish, like he said, also display a localized movement pattern or have a small home range. So this means they're not moving around that much. And so once you find a good rockfish fishing bowl, you can essentially fish them out. They also have a poor survival after being discarded because of their closed swim bladder. So some of these species, the usual catch and release techniques don't work that well for them. So in BC, as Jeff was mentioning, these rockfish were caught in a modest fishery, but in the latter half of the 20th century, there was an expanded fishery for both live and fresh rockfish, and also they were caught indirectly in the trawl, halibut, and lingcod fisheries. So that led to steep increases in the early half of the early 1990s, which is shown in the graph behind me. So this is from a published paper that Galiano and Logan have put out in 2010, and it shows the total rockfish landings in metric tons from 1958 to 2008, so including both inshore and other species. So as concern for this fish developed with all this local information about stock depletion, Fisheries and Oceans, along with many of you here in the room, implemented the Rockfish Conservation Area Strategy. And rockfish conservation areas were one component of this. So 164 of them were implemented along the coast of British Columbia, and this is a map from one of Dana's reports or publications on the rockfish conservation, and it shows rockfish conservation areas along the coast of Vancouver Island. So these areas are designated through a fisheries closure under the Fisheries Act, and they impose restrictions on gear that targets or leads to rockfish bycatch. So other fish and invertebrates can be harvested in these areas, although hook and line fishing and bottom trawling is prohibited. So they're acting as a harvest refugia for these fish. So in theory, areas of spatial protection are a good solution for rockfish conservation because of those localized movement patterns in their small home ranges. But research has been ongoing by people in this room to understand if these areas are being effective. So, for a marine reserve to be successful, people have to observe reserve restrictions. So species-specific reserves, like rockfish conservation areas, operate under the assumption of spillover. So that is when you have individuals crossing the boundaries to the areas of lower density. So therefore, your highest density of a targeted species is predicted to be inside a reserve, and this could create motivation for harvesters to ignore the restrictions. So both Dana and Darianne will address the research that they have conducted on recreational and commercial fishing pressure and non-compliance in these areas. So I'm not going to get into the details. They will be speaking later today and tomorrow. But I will say that recreational fishing compliance with regards to rockfish conservation areas has been found to be low in the Southern Gulf Island area. So therefore, this issue of compliance or non-compliance in recreational fishing pressure inside rockfish conservation areas could be a powerful variable in explaining whether these areas are effective or not. So, building on this research that Dana and Darianne have conducted on the level of recreational fishing pressure inside rockfish conservation areas and outside, brings me to my first research question. So I will be looking to to see if there are changes in rockfish abundance along a gradient of recreational fishing pressure. So knowing that this fishing pressure still exists within rockfish conservation areas, is there an ecological signal of non-compliance that we can tease out? So this research is in collaboration with the Galiano Conservancy Association Rockfish project. So it is one component of a larger project that includes community education, like workshops, of course, and other research and monitoring aspects. So one objective of my research was to tie in with the previous monitoring research and the previous research project that the Galiano Conservancy initiated in 2011. So this project was called the Freedom to Swim Rockfish Recovery Project, and a number of people here in this room participated in this, like Leah. So as part of this project, SCUBA surveys were conducted inside and outside of rockfish conservation areas, and what they found is that rockfish numbers were higher outside of the conservation areas. So another aspect of my research is to do a method comparison of underwater survey methods. So in order to set guidelines for fisheries management or for marine conservation initiatives, we need to know what is in the sea, essentially. So a challenge in conducting fisheries research is figuring out how many fish there are, what kind of fish there are, and then knowing how these components interact with other factors, say like anthropogenic impacts, habitat, or other marine animals. So I am looking at how we study ecological patterns and processes. So where and how does the survey method use mesh with or depart from your ecological process that you're considering? So for me, it's the rockfish. So many of you here are divers and have conducted research underwater or have done work underwater. And as many of you are familiar with the challenges in conducting underwater research. So diving, for example, requires specialized equipment that is often very expensive, and you are also limited by how deep you can explore and for how long. And often the marine environment does not cooperate. Now, you guys probably can't see here, but there is a sea line right around here. So the visibility can be very poor, and as Darian and I found out during fieldwork, currents can be very strong. So there is also the consideration of the species that you are observing. So rockfish, for example, like Jeff mentioned, are often cryptic. So they're hiding or they're close to their rocky crevice or ledge. So this means when you're doing your surveys, rockfish may be only observable part of the time. And then for the rest of the fish community, they're highly mobile. So on your surveys, these fish may be only present some of the time. So these type of constraints, either of the survey methods you're using or of the species that you're trying to observe, can limit the data that you're collecting. So you can have bias either in your survey method or as a result of the species you're trying to observe. So the different methods can yield different results. So this brings me to my second question, which is looking into how the survey method use may change the results. So for my fieldwork, I employed two different underwater survey methods here in the Southern Gulf Island area. I completed SCUBA surveys and also baited underwater video surveys. And then in the central coast of BC, I completed baited underwater video surveys and also towed camera video surveys. So I'm going to be looking to see what is the difference in my results when I'm collecting data on rockfish with SCUBA and when I'm collecting data on rockfish with baited underwater video. So both methods come with assumptions and of course pros and cons. So an objective of my research is not only to look at how accurate or precise my results are, but also to see what the most effective use of resources is. So looking at comparison of money, time, training needed, and what kind of equipment. And of course, the method you use depends upon the purpose of your survey. So what type of question are you asking? So underwater video is a survey method, as many of you are familiar with here. It allows for a non-invasive and non-extractive way to conduct underwater research. So as technology has progressed and there are more underwater cameras and the associated gear available at a reasonable cost, it has made it more accessible for use in research and monitoring projects, and it is gaining in popularity. So the type of survey method, depending upon what you want to survey, can be relatively economical and easy to build and deploy. So I built the system on the slides here, and it is right in front over here. with assistance from my dad and John, Dr. John Burke. And so the picture on the left is after our first deployment in the Gorge waterway. You can see we felt very successful. So the platform is built of PVC piping. There's two lights that face towards the front of it, and then the camera is on the front bar right here. I'll hold it up for you. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so when the system was deployed, I had dive weights on each side, and then this was attached to a large fishing buoy with a floating line. So the camera was restricted by depth to 60 meters that we used, and this system was employed between about 10 meters down to 30 meters of depth. We didn't test it much deeper, but it probably could go deeper. Now, I used a baited underwater video system. So this is the bait arm that attached to the front of it. Nobody should get close to this end. So baited underwater video systems have been used to attract fish into the field of view of the camera. So it can be good to employ when you're trying to survey fish that are cryptic, say like rockfish, or in areas where there is very little fish. Are we done? Yeah.
Abby, I think that should be your hat. It's heavier than my baby, I think. Do more workouts.
So some of the metrics that people collect with this type of underwater video is relative abundance, fish size, and diversity of fish. So the other method I used for this study was SCUBA. So SCUBA has been around for more than 70 years to monitor fish, benthic habitat, and organisms. So this is a more traditional method used for underwater surveys. So I wanted to compare this more traditional method with a method that is gaining in popularity. I also wanted to use a method that was similar to the method employed in the 2011 project, so there would be the potential for comparisons. So instead of attracting fish into the field of view of the camera, SCUBA allows the diver to look into cracks and crevices, which of course this system cannot do. So once I had my methods figured out, I had to determine where my study location was going to be. So I chose rockfish conservation areas that were within 10 kilometers of Galiano Island, and that were also adjacent to land. And then in total, 56 surveys were completed with 28 inside rockfish conservation areas and 28 outside rockfish conservation areas. So once I had my location figured out, I needed to figure out where my study sites would be located. So in ArcMap, I used bathymetry lasers of depth, substrate type, and slope and curvature. So these were provided graciously by Dana, thank you, and they had 20-meter resolution. So I use these to create polygons of good rockfish habitat both inside and outside of rockfish conservation areas. So good habitat typically defined as having a rocky bottom and higher slope and curvature. So like Jeff said, if you're picturing boulder fields, lots of crevices and rocky ledges. So the polygons that you can see here would have rocky substrate and areas of higher slope and curvature. So then I selected, so for my outside sites, they were within 1,000 meters of the rockfish conservation area boundary, and I also excluded 100 meters adjacent to the boundary to prevent having an area for fishers that may be fishing the line. Then I used a site selector tool that NOAA developed and randomly selected sites inside rockfish conservation areas and outside the areas in these areas of good habitat. Now all these sites are collected along a gradient of recreational fishing pressure using the data that Darian and Dana have collected. So once the platform was built, the sites were chosen, I headed out to the home away from home with Darian as a research assistant. So the Montague Marina. There's no showers here. Now, boat life was pretty tough. You know, someone had to do it. Fieldwork took place in the early fall, from September into October. So we used the Vancouver Aquarium's recommendations for surveying. So not every day was quite as sunny as this one. So each day we would travel to a survey site, and at each site we would first complete our SCUBA survey, and each survey would have 2 transects that were each 30 meters long. And along each transect we recorded fish species, size of the fish, and information about the habitat, such as depth, substrate type, relief, and complexity. So the survey method used is similar to the one that we employed in 2011. So this data provides information on abundance, size, and diversity of fish, both inside rockfish conservation areas and outside. And it also gives me information on which to compare habitat sites. So I want to make sure that my GIS analysis at the beginning was correct, so that my sites have similar habitat inside and outside. So following the SCUBA surveys, I deployed the underwater video system along the SCUBA transect for approximately 30 minutes. And I used a mixture of chopped herring and prawn and crab bait. So we wanted to use bait instead of non-baited because rockfish are such cryptic species, and you may be surveying in areas where there are not that many fish. And let me tell you, I got way too close and personal with that bait this summer. So following deployment, we had to pick up the platform. So as I mentioned before, it was attached to a floating line with a large buoy at the surface, and pickup usually went smoothly, with the exception of times where there was high waves or high wind, or in one area we had a very strong current and made it pretty tough. So here is an example of a clip from one of my beta video surveys. So this is from a survey on the central coast of BC. So you can see there's a quillback close to the camera, and then there's ratfish in behind the bait arm there. It's a bit hard to see with the lights. Now this is a clip from one of our surveys off the east side of Galiano Island. So we didn't only see fish, there were some marine mammals. So we didn't see this seal while we were diving.
That's what it is.
Can you figure out how to unscrew it?
No, some crabs were able to get some pieces of the bait out of it.
I'm
Try.
going at it from a different angle.
Yeah.
Let's see if this one works. So we didn't only capture rockfish on the surveys. You can see in the corner there's a little cod sneaking in.
Is that Spanish Hills? Or,
Valdez Island.
okay.
So this is a visual summary of the rockfish that were observed on my SCUBA surveys. So it is very preliminary. I have not completed any analysis on this data yet. So as you can see, there is little difference inside and outside of rockfish conservation areas. So the green is inside the conservation areas and the blue is outside. So this large spike here is outside conservation areas, and this is copper, probably because we were surveying between down to 20 meters depth, so it's pretty shallow. Then the other rockfish we saw were brown, Puget Sound, yellowtail, quillback, and black. So there were more rockfish observed outside of conservation areas, but we did see two different species inside, the yellowtail and black, that we never observed in the outside areas. So if you just look at that raw data, it doesn't include all the other interesting things that may be going on at each site. So these are the data that I will be using to answer my question. So I will be looking to see how the variables on the right, so the ones that are looking into habitat, the dive, fishing pressure, rockfish conservation area status, and fish community, are driving rockfish abundance and rockfish diversity on the left. So this is a breakdown of the other fish species observed along the SCUBA transects. And as you can see, shiner perch was most abundant at 3,745 in comparison to the other ones. So assessing the effectiveness of these spatial closures is important to ensure that management measures are meeting their goals. So evaluating the impact that recreational fishing pressure has on the effectiveness of rockfish conservation areas is critical to see if they're meeting their promise for rockfish conservation and mitigation. So this is especially important for islands like Galiano because they are surrounded by 5 rockfish conservation areas, 3 of which follow its shoreline. So assessing and monitoring the distribution and abundance of fish that inhabit rocky reef structures is challenging. And I hope that I can provide a comprehensive look at how different underwater methods can contribute to our understanding of nearshore fish and their habitat. So non-extractive monitoring methods like SCUBA and underwater video are ideal for marine protected area research and monitoring. And comparing these different methods can determine which one is the best use for the research project at hand, and also which could provide insight on techniques that could be used to carry out similar projects. So underwater video surveys like the one here was very economical and it was easy to deploy. So it could be a way that organizations with limited funding and capacity for staff, training, and equipment to carry out underwater research and monitoring projects. So another aspect of my research includes work on the central coast of British Columbia. So here I'm testing two different underwater survey methods, this baited camera system and also a towed camera setup. So I'm working with Dr. Natalie Ban and the Central Coast Indigenous Resource Alliance, and my component is a small part of a larger research project that is looking at historical abundance and catch size of rockfish and also current abundance, diversity, and size. So a couple pictures of our research, field research last August. So this is during one of our towed camera surveys. So we have Stephen and Natalie on the left, and Stephen's trying to drive the boat in a straight line while the towed camera is hanging off the back. Natalie's keeping all the camera equipment running properly in the boat, so all of our multiple computers and cables. And then Charlotte at the stern you can see the cable in her hands there. Now that is attached to a towed underwater video camera. And there's a small monitor on the aft deck, and as the camera gets closer to the bottom, she is quickly pulling it up. And we are yelling, up, up, up. And then as the camera gets too far and you can't see anything, then she slowly lets it down. So this project has been made possible by the support received from the Galiano Conservancy Association and its wonderful staff. So thank you, Galiano, for your interest in rockfish and to your support for this research. So I also have to thank the volunteers. So people volunteered a week of their time to help me out with my research. It wasn't all that tough, you know. We did eat fresh crab a couple nights of the week, but my research project improved and valued because of their experience. And of course, I have a number of people to thank at the University of Victoria. So like Dr. John Volpe and the Surf and Turf Research Group, Dr. Natalie Van and Dr. Jason Fisher, the Canadian Wildlife Federation, Neopard, and Ben Galiano. Ready to